Hello, my friends. I am really enjoying this new therapist who I took training with, Kory Andreas, and I wanted to show you her awesome website and the resources on it. And I'm going to be making loads of videos about everything I learned in the training, so get excited for that. Okay, so I'm just going to walk you through these great free resources on koryandreas.com. So you go right up here to resources. And the first one that I think is really helpful and nice, that one makes me sick. That picture. What is autism? Oh, yeah. Did you hear that burp? Excuse me. I get so nauseous with movement like that. There was a moving picture if you didn't catch it. Okay. So this is a nice, clear definition of autism as outlined in the DSM. And then we've got, and I'll go to this side in a second, we've got below it the differentiation between the medical model of autism, which is primarily based on a pathologizing perspective, and that's where the DSM comes from, right? It calls it the autism spectrum disorder. So seeing it as a group of deficits or impairments that need to be fixed or changed or treated, even if it's not impacting your life negatively. So, for example, if someone is stimming by, playing with their hands, and there's no harm being done and no one's being hurt, in a medical model, that would be taught, the person would be taught to eliminate that behavior. Um, Even though it's not hurting anybody, or eye contact, even though it doesn't harm anybody, it might be taught as a required behavior. So the medical model looks at what's wrong with the person instead of what the person needs or enjoys, even, right? Um, and I love that she's very clear that her practice does not support the medical model as an approach. She is a therapist. She does do autism evaluations. I am going to be having one with her. I like her model. She does like 4 or 5 visits and takes a nice long conversational approach. So I'll have more to tell you about that whenever I get that scheduled and completed. Um, so, in contrast, the medical model is the social model. And this is the model that I use when I think about autism. And this is also the model that she uses. The social model of autism looks at how can we as a society make life easier for autistic people. So it's exploring and accepting um, the realities and personal experiences, seeing that the differences or variations in how someone thinks, how someone's emotional landscape is, how someone's sensory experiences could make them, could result in them being limited in ways in society. um, we can account for those differences with accommodations in order to support the people with unique neurology. So you can think about, like, okay, yes, if we only have stairs going into buildings, someone with a mobility variation who is not able to access stairs might have limited access to that building. So, from a social model, what we could do is rather than trying to get them to change their mobility, we would add a ramp, for example. So, with a social model of autism, you might be adding trainings in the workplace for supervisors or coworkers to say, let's acknowledge that stimming is this is like a STEM welcome environment, or this is a no eye contact required environment, or this is a fragrance free environment, for example, because we're recognizing the sensory. Variations for our neurodivergent colleagues, for example. So it's about supporting folks with autism in such a way that it decreases the challenges or limitations while recognizing that there are challenges and limitations because this society is built for the allistic experience or non-autistic experience. Okay, so medical versus social, and we've got, DSMs coming from the medical model. So neurodivergence is a non-medical term that describes just like the huge group. It's a very big umbrella category for folks whose brains and nervous systems develop or work differently. So neurotypical is a term that's used for people who are not neurodivergent. Um, I have also heard neuromajority. Um, I've heard um, uh, allistic, which is here too, non-autistic. There's one other one that I'm not thinking of right now that's like a not neurodivergent, but without holding that word typical, which for some people they don't love. Even neuromajority can be misleading because similar to like we use words, the word minority to describe people of color often, even though folks of color are the global majority. So, like, minority or not normal or not typical is not great in terms of really recognizing. For me, I like allistic, and I would like for us to come up with a different term for not neurodivergent. But until then, we use what we can. Allistic means non-autistic specifically. It doesn't mean not neurodivergent specifically, so that's tricky. Neurodiverse is used by a lot of people who haven't really studied this in a way that's like not actually helpful. So neurodiverse is just a fact. Like we are neurodiverse. The world is neurodiverse. Um, so it's like saying racially diverse. Like, yes, that is a thing, but it's not describing anybody in particular. So a community of people, she says it's a community of people whose members are neurodivergent. And I could be wrong, but for me, it also includes people who are not neurodivergent. So like we have neurodiversity. Um, or our world is neurodiverse, but neurodivergent is specific to a person. Um, or if you were gonna say like, yeah, it's specific to a person. So like a neurodivergent author or a neurodivergent clinician, or they are neurodivergent, but you wouldn't say they are neurodiverse because neurodiverse means a variety of neurodivergence. So you might have an ADHD person and a um, autistic person and a person with TBI, etc. Okay, here's some good examples. So, being neurodivergent can include a diagnosis of ADD, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyspraxia, hyperlexia, OCD, synesthesia, Down syndrome, and more. So, a lot of these are considered developmental um, or genetic. So, there are things that you are born with. And then you can also have acquired neurodivergence. Examples of that are TBI. Um, Lots of people consider depression and anxiety, if it's environmentally acquired as a form of neurodivergence. Um, and also, what was the other one I was thinking of? Um, she has synesthesia here. There was another one I was thinking of that's acquired. Oh, like you could have a stroke and then you could have neurodivergence. Oh, I know what was the other one. You could have a long-term burnout or like um uh a long-term like sensory difficulties or just like sensitivities that then because your needs are not getting met, you can acquire like ADD or ADHD like characteristics. or neurodivergent, other neurodivergent characteristics through like the stressors of not like um, Lindsay McElrath talks at this to this well when she offers the neurocomplexity lifespan model, which just sort of like highlights that if we're say gifted and neurodivergent, like as things go and as we're not accommodated and life gets more challenging for us, we can actually like stack on some or like acquire some more neurodivergent characteristics because of the stress or long-term stress that's on the nervous system. Okay. All right. So medical social model. Okay. Um, what happened to Asperger's? We no longer use Asperger's. It was both that and PDD, NOS, pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, were replaced by the like overarching diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. I myself don't use the word disorder. I just use the word autism because I don't see it as a disorder. Uh, so these words also, like high functioning, low functioning, are no longer used because they're pretty disrespectful. Um, it's considered offensive. It basically is relating functioning to capitalism and productivity and output in a capitalistic society. And so uh, we don't use those words generally speaking anymore. And, we're recognizing more and more that the presentation of autism can be really different across the board. And that for many folks, many of their challenges are invisible. And so we never want to sort of say how functioning someone is because we don't really know what their internal landscape looks like. And especially we don't know what their life looks like if they weren't giving themselves the accommodations that they're giving. So, like for me, I might look incredibly like barely have any challenges. But if you spent a week with me, you would see how many accommodations are in my day to day life. And if we took all of those out, I would be like, in a puddle on the floor crying. Um, how do you know if your loved one is neurodivergent? So, within the autistic community, pretty much, especially with autistic adults, folks consider self-diagnosis like almost like just as valid and also like maybe even more valid than a formal diagnosis. Um, she considers it just as valid. Autism diagnosis can go a lot of ways depending on the training of the diagnostician. And so she does offer diagnostic services, and they look a lot different than like if you go to a developmental psych who's just like super DSM oriented medical model and is going to give you a bunch of tests that like you might come out, cognitively into like high IQ, and then they're going to be like, oh, you don't have autism. Um, there's a lot of information on that in terms of how high masking autistic folks are not often, acknowledged by that medical model. Um, okay. Yeah. Many clients arrive at her practice after they've been invalidated or negated by other professionals. I love this. The average autistic adult is statistically said to have been misdiagnosed 8 times before an appropriate diagnosis was given. Um, just because practitioners training, right? It's like the practitioners are just really underinformed. Um, and most folks are going to end up getting psychiatric diagnoses. So, like, I've been diagnosed with basically everything, like here. I've been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, bipolar, borderline. I have not been diagnosed with OCD or narcissistic personality disorder, but those first four I've been diagnosed with, and uh, none of the treatments have really worked, and none of the medications worked. So that's also like if you're a person who's gone through just like every diagnosis in the book, and none of the treatment or meds have really done what the provider expected them to do. that might be an indication that'd be worth exploring neurodivergence. Um, you can experience depression and anxiety alongside autism, but it can present differently. Yeah, a lot of folks find themselves in TikToks or Instagrams or online quizzes. She recommends the Aspie quiz. I've never taken that one actually, but I also like the website Embrace Autism. They have some really nice checklists and questionnaires that can be done. Okay, let's see. I have 5 more minutes. I'm going to go through this and then I'll just show you the recommended reading. So, autism is frequently misdiagnosed, as we said. Especially for those folks who are assigned female at birth, who are any type of all of the autism research was done on more affluent white male, cis males, I'll say. And so folks of color, gender diverse folks, women, people who have less financial resources, people who have had less educational resources, all of those people tend to get ruled or like not even seen, not even ruled out, but they just like don't get seen. They're often just like, you're fine, or you have oppositional defiance disorder or something. And then when somebody is like, high masking, people are going to be like, oh, you have friends, you're social, make eye contact, you got good grades, you have empathy. Like, none of those things mean you don't have autism. I love this. Facts. Autistic people smile, make eye contact, manage personal relationships, have friends, have jobs, have empathy, have sex, are often told they're definitely not autistic. We're not identified by professionals, look like you and me, seem normal, are social, have long-term relationships, etc. So there's just like a lot of myths out there because there's a lot of presentations that have not been acknowledged over the course of recent history. Okay, recommended reading. This one is very exciting to me because I'm obsessed with books. So many. I can't wait to read all of them. If you don't know Fern Brady, she's a comedian. This is a wildly fascinating book, and she's a lot of fun. You can find her on YouTube and social media. Devin Price, I'm a big fan of. Divergent Mind is on my list. I'm excited to read. Laziness Does Not Exist is a great one, Devin, again. Um, I haven't read any of these. Different Not Less, Dr. Temple Grandin, awesome, awesome. Human, Thinking in Pictures is a great one. Um, okay. I have not read these. Like I said, I'm really excited. So check these out. See which ones sound interesting to you. I'm just seeing if there's any ones that I have. A Neurotribes is a good one. Burnout, by the Nagoski sisters. Huge fan of that one. Come As You Are is also Nagoski. Yeah, really fun book list here. So check these out. I'm excited too. Um, Okay, so check out Kory Andreas. She's also on Instagram. It's called like Neurocurious or something. I'll put it in the description. And who else do you love who's talking about autism in this way? Because I would love to hear about them. I'm a huge Lindsay Macaras, Dr. Neff fan. Now Kory Andreas would love to add to my list of humans who are talking about this. So let me know. Okay. Let's see. Let's end the recording. Okay. Love you.